For centuries, the Barbary Coast was infamous, not just for its pirates, but for its relentless slave raid. Coastal towns across Europe lived in perpetual fear, and countless souls were violently torn from their homes. Destined for North Africa, many were doomed to be objects of exotic fantasy and harem, or to suffer under the brutal sun in chains. But what made the Barbary slave trade so pervasive, and how did the plight of enslaved women, captured and coerced into harems, magnify this era's sheer cruelty? Join us as we journey into the heart of the Barbary slave trade, uncover its most haunting secrets, and tell you why you would not have survived. Welcome to History on Fleek. From pirate ports to Ottoman palaces. Alright, the name Barbary might sound exotic, almost enchanting, but its history is anything but. Spanning the 16th to the early 19th century, the Barbary slave trade was a haunting chapter of human suffering and commerce. Its epicenter? The sun-drenched coastlines of North Africa, with bustling ports like Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, acting as the main hubs of this dark enterprise. Now you might wonder, how did these North African ports become such significant centers of the slave trade? Enter the mighty Ottoman Empire. For a significant chunk of this era, the Ottomans, a powerhouse ruling vast territories, had their dominion extending to these coastal cities. This association provided the Barbary corsairs with not just political backing, but also a colossal marketplace for their captured Europeans, sub-Saharan Africans, and others. But it wasn't just about politics or commerce. The Ottomans, in their strategic brilliance, saw the Barbary pirates as a tool, a maritime extension of their vast power, disrupting European sea trade and asserting dominance. So while the shimmering Mediterranean painted a serene picture from afar, beneath its azure waves was a world of contrasts and contradictions. Take the story of Hurrem Sultan, for instance. Originally captured from her homeland in present-day Ukraine, she was thrust into an unfamiliar world of the Ottoman Empire. But her destiny was about to take an unexpected turn. With a combination of beauty, charisma, and intelligence, Hurrem Sultan not only caught the eye of Sultan Suleiman, the most formidable Ottoman ruler, but she also became his cherished wife. Not just a mere concubine, she ascended as one of the most influential women in Ottoman history. Yet it's essential to remember that Hurrem's story is an exception. For most, life in the Barbary trade was not about ascension, but oppression. Not palaces, but prisons. The tragic tale of eunuchs. One of the most horrific victims of the Barbary slave trade was the young boys, torn from their homes and futures. Imagine barely understanding the complexities of life and then being plucked from your homeland, only to undergo a horrifying procedure, one that would alter your identity and life forever. This was the brutal reality for countless young Russian and African boys who were cruelly castrated before they even hit puberty to serve as eunuchs. The process? Brutal and crude. Their young bodies were forced to endure the unimaginable pain of the removal of their genitalia, with no anesthesia or modern medical practices. Of these boys, only 3 out of 10 would see the light of the next day, succumbing to the torment and complications of this crude surgery. One might think that surviving such a procedure would be rewarded with a comfortable life, but it was just the beginning. These eunuchs, devoid of their identity and scarred both mentally and physically, were molded into perfect, obedient robot slaves. Basir Agha is a name that emerges from the shadows of this dark history. Around age 60, he was appointed chief harem eunuch under Sultan Ahmed III in 1716. By his death in 1746, Agha, in his 90s, had become one of the wealthiest, most powerful, and longest-living chief harem eunuchs in Ottoman history. While he held power and influence, one must wonder at the cost. And after all, not all eunuchs were like him. Some were even subjected to sexual assaults. Serving the intricate politics of the harems and the whims of the sultans, these eunuchs navigated a world of opulence and cruelty. What's particularly chilling is that despite Islam strictly prohibiting eunuchism, the Ottomans, inspired by the Chinese, embraced the practice. From safeguarding harems to managing palace affairs, from culinary tasks to mere cleaning, the presence of eunuchs was ubiquitous. In their quest for luxury and dominance, the Ottomans ignored profound religious edicts, subjecting thousands to a life of torment and subjugation. From galley chains to harem walls, the Barbary treatment was equally harsh for women as well, a harrowing reminder of the indiscriminate cruelty of the times. Women taken from their homes and lives were not just subjected to the grueling labor and hardships that men faced, but also bore the added brunt of sexual assaults. The pirates and slave traders of the Barbary Coast were known for their violent and lewd treatment of female captives. Many of these women ended up in the markets, their fates sealed as they were auctioned off to the highest bidder. Rich Ottoman pashas and even sultans, looking for additions to their harems, often purchased these women. Beyond the physical torment, the emotional trauma of being sold and used as a mere commodity was immeasurable. Their dignity and autonomy were stripped away. They were seen as trophies or assets, their worth dictated by their beauty and youth. And while tales of a few who ascended to positions of influence like harem sultan might be touted, for the majority, their lives were ones of servitude, deprivation, and violation. As we delve deeper into the lives of these captives, the bleak reality faced by both men and women becomes even more palpable. While women grappled with the harrowing ordeals of subjugation and assault, the men were not spared from their own set of brutal trials. Imagine the weight of heavy wooden oars on your blistered hands, the salty spray of the sea on your face, and the incessant shouts of overseers ringing in your ears. Day after day, countless captives found themselves trapped in this grueling rhythm, forced to row the massive galley of the Barbary corsairs. Historical records show that many Christian slaves like Miguel de Cervantes, the famous writer of Don Quixote, were forced to work hard in the galleys. These slaves were chained to oars, rowing pirate ships, often until they died from exhaustion or were deemed too weak to continue. But the torture wasn't just physical. Picture the emotional devastation of being torn away from your loved ones, from familiar surroundings, and then auctioned off like mere property. The mental scars, often deeper than the physical ones, manifested as depression, anxiety, and what we'd recognize today as PTSD. Every sunset was a reminder of another day in captivity, another day away from home. Speaking of home, many of these captives hailed from Europe, accustomed to milder climates. The searing heat of North Africa was a brutal shock. Sunburns, heat stroke, and unfamiliar ailments wreaked havoc on their bodies. Diseases they had never encountered back home now threatened their very existence. Ransom letters sent home by European captives often depicted the drastic shift they'd experienced. One such letter from an English captive in Algiers in the 1620s described the torturous heat and unfamiliar foods that often led to illnesses. Even worse, the medical care, or lack thereof, was primitive. Minor injuries or illnesses, easily treatable today, often turned fatal. Broken bones, infections, and fevers were death sentences in many cases. Modern comforts which we take for granted were non-existent. A relentless assault on faith, freedom, and identity. Still, hope persisted. Stories of daring escape attempts passed in hushed tones among the slaves. Some, armed with nothing but sheer will, managed to break free, their tales of liberation inspiring others. Yet many such tales ended in tragedy, recapture, punishment, or execution. The narrative of Cervantes is again poignant here. He made at least 4 escape attempts from his captivity in Algiers. Each time he was caught, he faced severe punishments, but was spared execution because of his value as a potential ransom. The vast Saharan desert and the treacherous Mediterranean Sea were formidable barriers to freedom. Amidst all this, families back home frantically gathered whatever they could to ransom their captured loved ones. The gut-wrenching feeling of a mother selling her heirlooms or a father taking on overwhelming debts, clinging onto the fragile hope of reunion. But not all were so fortunate. Some, knowing their families couldn't afford the ransom, felt an abyss of despair, their days stretching indefinitely. Lastly, the spiritual assault. Many captives faced immense pressure to forsake their faith and embrace Islam. Stories tell of those who resisted, enduring added hardships, and standing steadfast in their beliefs. Yet some converted, not necessarily out of conviction, but as a desperate bid for survival. The letters of Thomas Pellow, an Englishman enslaved for 23 years, gives a chilling account. Kidnapped at the age of 11, Pellow was forcibly converted to Islam, circumcised, and made to serve his master in various capacities, causing unimaginable mental and emotional trauma. Between 1580 and 1680, there were in Barbary around 15,000 renegades, Christian Europeans who converted to Islam, and half of the corsair captains were in fact renegades. Some of them were slaves that converted to Islam, but most had probably never been slaves and had come to North Africa looking for opportunity. This is History on Fleek, And we'll see you next time